Gulliver, good to have you with us this morning. Firstly, talk to us a little bit more about this meeting at Ramstein. What exactly are we expecting to be agreed there, and how significant is this?
Well, quite a lot of announcements have been made over the course of this week before the Ramstein meeting, and I think the feeling in Ukraine is that there is a real groundswell of willingness to supply the country with heavy weapons. Of course, one of the main questions is whether or not Germany will authorize the delivery of these Leopard 2 tanks. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, had been saying that they would only do it if the Americans agreed to send their Abrams battle tanks, which the Americans have made clear they're not willing to do. But the Americans say that's because they simply wouldn't be workable in Ukraine because they have very complicated fuel, maintenance and training requirements, and it just wouldn't make any sense. And Germany's new defense minister, Boris Pistorius, said yesterday that he didn't see an explicit link between the Americans sending the Abrams tanks and Germany at least agreeing for other countries to send their German-manufactured Leopard tanks, which require German authorization. So that really, raised hopes in Kiev that the Germans would give the green light. But also, yesterday, Mateusz Morawiecki, the Polish Prime Minister, basically indicated that Poland would send its Leopard 2 tanks even without German authorization if that authorization was not forthcoming. On top of that, there was a surprise announcement yesterday from Denmark that Denmark would send all 19 of its French-manufactured Caesar self-propelled howitzer systems. Also yesterday, tiny Estonia, the Baltic state, said that it was upping its military aid to Ukraine to 1% of its total GDP, which is very significant in financial terms. So there definitely is a sharp increase in willingness to provide Ukraine with military support, even though, I guess it remains to be seen today whether it's going to go quite as far as the Ukrainians are hoping. I remind you, General Zaluzhny, the head of the Ukrainian armed forces, said that the country needs at least 300 main battle tanks in order to really pursue the counteroffensives it has planned for the coming weeks and months effectively.
Yeah, and Gulliver, this all happening as well as Kyiv says this is really a crucial moment in terms of how the war is progressing in Ukraine. Talk to us a little bit about the latest on the ground there in terms of the fighting.
Well, really, apart from the ongoing intense battle for Bakhmut, which Russian forces are trying to take control of and Ukrainian forces have been determined to hold and remain so despite losing control of most of the neighbouring town of Soledar, it's quieter along other parts of the front line than it has been. And what the Ukrainians are saying is that they see the Russians preparing for a new offensive in the early spring, and they know that the Russians are training more and more conscripted troops, and the Ukrainians, are keen to get their counteroffensives going before the Russians are ready, basically. But it's a situation where both sides are preparing for more heavy fighting to come, really.
OK, we leave it there, Gulliver. Thanks so much for joining us with that update. That's our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg, joining us live this morning from Kyiv.